Things are going to start happening to me now.
You've done all the reading. You're a scholar. You're a professor. You've done all the reading. You've done the intellectual heavy lifting.
More or less, eat shit and die.
You wouldn't know a fact if it begged you all night long.
Want to give the wrong impression because I am very high.
Right up behind him with a hatchet. Smash, smash, smash. Yeah.
Care. I'm a libertarian. What I'm getting is,
did you vote for Joe Jorgensen or Trump?
Who?
Joe Jorgensen. That was the perfect answer. Thank you.
It's Friday. It's Andy. It's Tyler. You heard it right there, Andy. He's a libertarian. So I think when the show is over, he's now saying he's anti-libertarian. Matter of fact, he is going against libertarians. That's Alex Jones we just heard there. I'm Tyler Yonke. It's Andy, Garbage Main. It's Friday. It's episode 65. What's up, Andy?
Oh, nothing. Just chilling. Just hanging out.
Glad to hear that you're chilling. What does that comprise of in your world?
Oh, well, I had some baby mama drama earlier today or over the night and into today. And just kind of been putting out fires, but really just sitting on my ass and not getting done some of the things that should be done.
That's what happens. We got baby mom. I had my daughter, she's 17, did a bunch of sports this last weekend, then got dehydrated, got sick, and then she's supposed to do what's called senior survival, where they go up in the mountains. She passes out, has like a minor seizure. We had to go pick her up. She's doing okay.
Has she had seizures before?
No. So the doctor's like, look, I think it was seizure activity. In other words, probably more like you just kind of locked up, you're dehydrated, all these, she's at elevation, all these things combo. It probably wasn't seizure. You didn't bite your tongue, you didn't bite your cheek. She's already making jokes about having seizures already. So I think we're good.
Hey,
so
at least she's in good spirits about it.
Right. She is. And I'm like, so you didn't survive. That you know that, right? And she's like, yeah. So anyway, baby mama drama. We got daughter trouble here, but it's Friday. So
yeah, I'm off work, thankfully. Yeah. I try to, when I don't have work or my daughter, to really just enjoy not doing anything.
Right. Well, we got David Brady in the chat, and he's using curse words, but he's 18, so I think we're okay with that.
He's 18 now?
I think so. By the way, I'm going to talk to David this next Thursday, so tune in, because David said he's cutting out his show. This motherfucker, he went high octane, got a bunch of big guests, and then just like bailing out there. I guess that's the way to do it. So I'm going to find out why.
He's 18 now. He's got shit to do. He's a man.
Right.
All right.
And you just turned 30 something,
32.
30. Okay, 37. I don't know. The numbers kind of look like 32. You should have something better to do too. What's going on?
I know. I didn't do shit. I went to work and did laundry.
Oh, he said not till January. Okay. Well, I'm sorry for the cursing.
He's probably got a little girl or something to chase around.
Right. I hope so. Good for him. So we did our Kill Tony. What did you think of that episode? So it was a little different, obviously. I didn't put it on on my own stream for a few reasons, as you can maybe imagine. But I'm thinking of maybe at least cutting it down, putting the Kill podcast portion on there. I thought it was almost easier when Jose's in charge, and I'm like, hey guys, I don't know, he's kicking you. Oh, there you go. So did you enjoy it?
Well, I think, the last one we had that was on your channel, you probably had a little bit too much booze and wanted to bring everybody on and keep them on. And I was like, what the fuck are you doing, Tyler?
What I need to do, Andy, is join you in. They could do teams on these things, and you can have some backdoor controls too. And if you want to kick some people off, maybe that'd be a good thing.
Oh, I would love to.
Okay. I did just randomly mute him. No, that was on our space. Sorry, that was on Spaces. I just randomly muted Black Mutualist, so that was good.
Yeah, you got to be careful. You go to those revolving doors with certain type of guests who are just going to want to talk about their penis the whole time and their bank account or whatever. And it's like, and then what's the retort from the person who doesn't get that they're dealing with this type of person? I said, well, my bank account. I was like, okay, no one gives a shit, bro. Like, I didn't give a shit when he said, I'm not going to give a shit when you say it.
Right. And by the way, my response there, and you're right, the drinking was maybe an issue. I wasn't trying to respond with, yeah, but my bank account. I was saying, we can go down this route. It's not going to be good for you if we have to actually show receipts, and it shouldn't matter. I don't really give a shit. Of all those people there, the one I hold in highest esteem is Andy, and Andy is complaining about his bank account all the time. So I don't know what the deal is, but I just tell him.
How about let's not go down this route?
Yeah,
that's not even suggest that we could go down this route.
Right. Yeah.
But no, I mean, I enjoyed the last one, the crossover episode with the Tower Boys. I thought it was fun.
It was. They needed some help, so it was good for us to come in there and save them. You know, you seemed a little quiet. What was the deal? Why were you not speaking up as much?
I don't know. I was probably just drained from work and shit.
Okay.
I was just trying to pick my battles there, you know.
That makes sense. So I thought we would talk about a few things, and then you and I, back before we even started going live, we were having a podcast, and it disappoints me because we were having some good conversation. But Alex Jones goes on, Steven Crowder, and makes some comment. Dave Smith comes out. You know, when I did the Dave Smith interview, and I wanted him to critique, and then Clint has done that too, where we go through some interviews, and it's kind of like my thing. But yeah, one of the people that does it the best is Dave Smith. When he does like Hassan Piker and some of these others, and he takes a video and he critiques it, he really does it well. So I should maybe get out of that game, because he did the Alex Jones one, and I thought he did fairly well. Did you watch that at all?
No, I didn't. I haven't watched Part of the Problem in a while, but I do like the last Part of the Problem that I really enjoyed was him slaughtering Hassan Piker.
And by the way, that's why I was like, Dave, you got to come on for this. You're the person for this, because he's so good at it. By the way, we haven't even talked about that. Did you want to give me some praise for my my Dave interview? Ready?
I thought it was good.
Go. Oh, thank you. That's what
I thought it was good. You know, Dave is really good. He has some good reactions, and you got some good stuff out of him pre-show and throughout the watch. Although I was disappointed with Dave's take on some of the family court stuff, but obviously Dave has an intact family and has never had to experience family court, so I can understand maybe why he wouldn't be as well versed in some of that stuff.
You and me both. I was confused as to even what he was saying, really. So, but I was like, doesn't matter. I just kind of wanted to get him to say something. Maybe he had some insights, and then we'd go on from there. So, but yeah, I think, you know, you and I, we've talked about the family court stuff, and I think, you know, I'm always interested. And, you know, one person I really want to talk to about this is Larry Sharp, because I've heard him talk. He has it. By the way, Larry, if you hear anything, someone comes up, he's got a solution. It may not be a good one, but he's always got like, here's how I'm going to solve it. And I do like that in him, because he thinks out of the box. And so I've heard him talk about the family courts, and, you know, we've talked about this. They're different everywhere. But I think he would be.
I got to give praise where praise is due. When I heard Larry talk about this issue on Timcast, I was excited. You know, like I do not hear very many prominent libertarians at all talk about this subject, or even have an idea of what's going on. Like, we're getting to a point where half the children born in this country are now born out of wedlock, and we're coming up to that point. So, I mean, unless you're willing to talk about having stable family units, like, all the other shit can go to the wayside, as far as I'm concerned. Like, if you don't have a mom and a dad in your house, how are you going to care about the wars or the Fed or any of that shit when you don't even have a family?
This is the family court version of Make Your Bed of Jordan Peterson, in a sense.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's definitely libertarian solutions and to some of this stuff. And I know that they're all different, because each state, it's not a federal thing. It's a state to state issue.
Yeah.
But they can definitely be improved upon. You know, there's maybe things that could be left alone, but there's definitely things that could be improved upon, or,
Absolutely.
And move the needle in the right direction.
You know, and once again, I'm working on, I have this Substack, and I've started to do it simply because I kind of wanted a centralized place. Sometimes it's better to express a few things better rather than tweets. You can do a little bit more. But one article I'm working on that's getting a little lengthy, Andy, is about family court stuff. And, you know, I'm always listening to what you're saying, because I'm in the process, and I'm not necessarily removed from it in a way that you are. So that's why I asked Dave. I just wanted to get some different perspectives. And Dave basically said, if you divorce, you might as well die in hell. By the way, I must say, you said about kids being born out of wedlock. That's a big deal. You'll probably have always heard this stat about all 50% of marriages end in divorce. I'm sure you've heard that, right?
Yeah, I think that it's convoluted.
It's wrong, by the way.
Yeah, there's widows, and it doesn't take into account like the time that people are married. It's kind of like a snapshot, as Thomas Sowell talks about.
What it does is it does accentuate, but you've got to analyze it better. And it's about making mistakes, and people that make mistakes tend to keep making mistakes. So what it is if you get married and you never, 75%, I think is what the number used to be of marriages stay intact. It's that 25% that continually get divorced. And so they have multiple divorces, and that number then becomes, when you aggregate it all out, that's 50%, but you just have this 25% turnover rate that's just constant.
The couple like my parents, you know what I mean, that have been married as long as dirt has been around, aren't factored into that. Whereas the people who get divorced 4 or 5 times, are adding to that stat. It's kind of like how the COVID stats got taken out of context.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. And my thing is, like with anything, you make a mistake, I got divorced, and it's not going to happen again, but I had to realize that what mistakes I had made, even though they were 99% her fault, let's be real. But that 1%,
she is a woman.
Yeah. I could fix it. And if I don't, it's going to turn out the same way. So, make sure she likes it in the pooper, and I'm kidding, kind of.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's definitely personal responsibility that goes into this.
Yeah.
I think that's a big factor. And, I'm not asking for a state solution. I prefer that more of the responsibility is on the parents and less on the state, is really, like, to me, seems like a more libertarian solution.
I tell clients, I even said one on a phone call today and like, you've put the state in your, and it's just my stupid way of doing it. I'm like, hey, you've involved the state in your marriage. So now you don't get to just say whatever. A judge is going to make it. So, as you and I have had conversations, when you have issues, if you don't like that, there's behooves you both to try to solve them out of court for everybody, of course. So, unless you have anything else on that, I think let's play a clip here. This is not Alex Jones though. This is Phill Magness. I'm sure you've heard about him. What do you know about Phill Magness?
I don't know a lot about him. He's been really going at Hoppe on Twitter lately and pulling things either out of context or just arguing against first principles. And to me, what he has said has shown a clear, like, in-group anti-white preference. And that's fine. I don't care he said that he was like half Mexican or whatever. I don't care. Like, if you want to, if we're talking Hoppe's covenant community, private law society, hypothetical world, right? If you want to discriminate someone from living in your community for having too big of feet, then you can do that. Like, I don't have to let someone in my house that wants to shoot up fentanyl. Like, same principle there. I can discriminate against anybody for whatever reason, however I want to.
Right. I agree. Magoo's chiming in here. He's always good. 13% of divorced couples make up 50% of all divorces? ? I don't know about the exact 1350. All right, there we go. Maybe a number. Hey, I don't know if those numbers are. Oh, it's a joke. Okay. So well done, Magoo. Way to troll me. So Phill Magness, by the way, if you don't know, he's kind of I would say he's almost like a intellectual Karen, where his job seems to be calling out and finding. He calls it accountability of other journalists, but it's mostly like academics. People write books. He finds out, that they're actually, Magoo's 2 minutes behind. No big deal. He says, there we go. He finds like people that write books, plagiarism, He points those things out. That's all fine and dandy. We don't care about IP stuff. So it would be interesting to talk to Kinsella and see what he thinks about people that do plagiarism, right? And it's mostly in the academic world. So this guy's done that, and okay, good for him. He wrote a bunch of things about the 1619 Project. Good for him on that. Now, what I'm going to play here, yes, he's gone after Hoppe, But first, there's a clip here where Nick Gillespie, our very own, is going to ask him a question about accountability and kind of, anyway, let me know if you can't hear this. Okay, Andy?
All righty. He doesn't pass the fist check.
Let's talk a little bit about when accountability works, and then I want to ask you about accountability on the libertarian end of things, or conservative. Going back some years, Michael Belisle was a historian at Emory. He published a book that talked about how the idea that in colonial America and the early republic, gun ownership was widespread, and he seemed to have an airtight case. People like
have you heard about this by any chance? It seems like gun was okay.
And Morgan, the dean of colonial American history, was like, "Wow,
you're drinking like Andrew of Popular Liberty. Way to go!
This guy has revolutionized the field, et cetera." It turned out that he was a fraud. Like, he made up his sources and then compounded it by every time people were like, "Well, let's see your data," and it was like, "Oh, there's a water line broke, or my computer." So it was like unbelievable. But he effectively got flushed out of the system.
He did. Yeah.
So accountability is still possible.
Yeah.
Right. Who are the people broadly, I guess, on the right, or who tend to agree with you with your critique of kind of left of center, academia or intellectual work? Who are the people that need to get flushed out of the system that you think are doing bad work?
Yeah. Well, I do worry about, I guess there's two things here.
Yeah.
Very few of them are in the academy anymore, because the number of people on the right that hold professorships, I think it's like 10 to 12% of the academy now, and that's down from like 30% in 1980. So it's very few that are working in there, but you do have, instances of people that venture far afield of their lanes. So one, I'm just naming because I heard him on the radio the other day. So Victor Davis Hanson, by all accounts, is an outstanding classicist, someone who works in a very narrow research area, but he's also a political commentator on every subject under the sun.
And he's affiliated with the Hoover Institution now, and he used to write a lot for National Review and a bunch of right-wing publications.
Exactly. So I see someone like him that when he ventures outside of his expertise, it's no different than the commentary you get from Michelle Malkin or one of these Ann Coulter types of commentators that are basically writing red meat for the conservative base.
Yeah.
And I think there's a danger there. Unfortunately, I think it does discredit some of his scholarly work because it's now associated with the guy that writes these bomb-throwing op-eds.
Yeah. Hans Hermann Hoppe.
Okay, so I just wanted to set that up because I think it comes into play here in a little bit because he, in my opinion, with Hoppe, he tends to go outside of his lane. So I wanted to see if he, first of all, describes what this is like with Victor Davis Hanson, who I understand, I know who he is, and I get what he's saying. And like you and I, we go outside of our lanes all the time. But he's playing to something. So anyway, let's go here first. David,
I would agree with most everything he said there. From me as a well-read Thomas Sowell reader, I mean, Sowell talks about the same thing as far as experts traveling outside of their field generally are wrong, and it does discredit their work. So I don't disagree with what he was saying, even though I don't know who he was talking about.
Right. Okay. So Victor David Hanson, he works at the Hoover Institute, writes for a National Review, kind of a political, foreign policy type of guy. And so when he talks about other things, he says And by the way, this is what I tweeted. Let's go to David Brady, who said, "Never heard of Phill before he dunked on Hoppe. Just made me like Hoppe more and get a poor impression of Phill." Okay. I would say the danger of that, though, David, is how do you know he's wrong? You're just kind of siding with people that go on Twitter. Now, you're right. By the way, you're right. But why are you right? Have you looked into why you were right? And I always want to make sure, when I'm going to talk about the Alex Jones stuff, I think that's important. As far as Phill goes, he did a bunch of work on the 1619 project. He actually made them remove stuff, didn't make them, but they did remove stuff from the New York Times website. What's her name? Hannah Jones started saying different things because of what he was saying. He was been on Tom Wood's podcast, so he's been prolific out there, and he's got a lot of good things in that. But when I start to see what he's saying about Hoppe, then I start to, just like he's saying, I start to question all his work. Right? I don't know. Have you ever had that with someone?
Oh, definitely. Definitely. Well, it's a big part of the reason why I don't trust experts.
Yeah, and then if you look at my brilliant interviews with Dave Smith and Clint, we talk about both of those guys, kind of the appeal to elites, right? Oh, I'm just going to let them. Oh, that's just fine. I mean, there's things that Andy can call me about something about legal, but then maybe you want to check some things out yourself. So anyway, Phil, what he's saying here, I agree with completely. Now let's get into Hoppe. First of all, how much Hoppe have you read?
I honestly have listened to a lot more lectures than I've read. I've read Democracy, the God That's Failed, and I've been trying to find more free stuff. So the next one that's on my list is the Ethics and Economics of Private Property. So hoping to get into that one. And then I know people say don't read that one before you read Theory of Socialism and Capitalism. But to me, I've been going down a deep lately, Hoppe and even Kinsella lecture hole about Hoppe's work. And I mean, I don't really find much of anything that I would disagree with. It definitely makes me think about things differently. But I'm a big Hoppe fan from everything I have read and seen and heard.
I have not read, and we're going to do some Rothbard stuff here in a little bit, but I haven't done a lot of. I've listened to Democracy, the God That Failed, and not in total, and then I tend to fall asleep at night when I'm listening to it. So I haven't done it in a way that I want to. So I'll leave it to kind of. This is what David said here. To be honest, I have just actually read the chunks he posted, and it was just all one line out of a paragraph that is normal libertarian. Yeah, I agree. So okay, you ready for the next portion here?
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. Let me do it just a little bit faster so that we get through there we go.
Hoppe,
yes,
is one of your. I was going to say he's one of your white whales.
Yeah.
I mean, he's certainly into whiteness. But,
it's certainly the case.
Hoppe, who taught for years at University of Nevada.
Do you know that? I mean, is that true? Is he into whiteness? I know he tried to equate him to being a Nazi sympathizer in a sense, but what about whiteness?
No, I don't know that to be the case with Hoppe. I mean, Hoppe is, if you've listened to his speech about libertarianism and the alt-right, it's basically saying that the alt-right acknowledges that that we don't care about being called racist anymore. Like, it doesn't mean anything.
Right.
None of this shit matters. Like, if you want to have a separatist fucking black covenant community or white covenant community, or if you want to discriminate against people for any reason, that seems to be the Hoppian answer. And he's pretty thorough about describing the case for discrimination and why we have the right to do it. And
now,
people misunderstand that for whiteness.
Yeah, and here we go from Tickling Testes. Thank you. Hoppe is married to a Muslim and lives in Turkey. Okay. Yeah. I don't think that matters to someone that takes a critique on here. But by the way, so anyway, let's get back to this because I really want you to remember what he was saying before about the critique stuff. And then here we go.
Out of Las Vegas, was a protege or a colleague of Murray Rothbard, and things like that. What's your beef with Hoppe, and is he somebody who needs to be critiqued more forcefully within the broad libertarian world?
Yeah, so Hoppe has strangely come to prominence as this figure. He's seen as the designated heir of Rothbard, and as supposedly
who had designated himself as the heir of Mises, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And you argue that they fundamentally misread Mises.
That is absolutely the case.
Okay, what's the basis of that?
So the clearest is the question of immigration. Mises is a good, solid 19th century classical liberal, especially on immigration. And he is vehement in his opposition to immigration restrictions.
Okay, so before I go there, I just remember he said he misreads Mises. Okay, so there's a few things. One is I could be a proponent of Rothbard and disagree with his analysis on children, right? It doesn't mean I discard Rothbard. Now, if I say, oh, he actually didn't say what he actually said about children, then I would be misreading him, right?
Yeah.
So he's saying he's misreading him. Now, let's take a listen and see if he actually talks about misreading him or just a different interpretation. And by the way, do you know what Mises or Hoppe and Mises have to say about immigration? I'm sure they're different, and I'm sure it's easy to dissect between the two.
I'm not as versed on Mises, but I know the principle behind Hoppe talking about immigration is, all right, well, whether the government has the border open or closed, it's still the government doing something. You you would need to have a moratorium on immigration in order to get to a closer libertarian societal order. And, you know, you wouldn't have someone, if we're talking about private property rights, someone does not have the right to immigrate into your home. I'm sorry, like it's that simple.
That's evil. Okay, let's go back to this.
Does so on all the classical economic arguments. This is a theme that runs through his text from the 1910s to basically when he dies. And Hoppe has tried to invent this kind of carved out counter narrative while still claiming to be a representative of Mises.
Now, do you see that as a problem? I mean, a counter narrative to one specific issue, which is immigration, he carves that out. Is that a misreading of Hoppe in your mind?
I think it's a misreading of Mises too. I mean, I don't.
I'm sorry, of Mises. Is Mises misreading Hoppe in that sense?
Well, I mean, I think Hoppe is not misreading Mises, and I think this guy is misreading both Mises and Hoppe. I mean, I don't think, and I've admitted that I haven't read a lot of Mises, but I don't think Hoppe is arguing against all immigration, right? You can say that skilled labor is good, or if you're going to allow immigration, they have to provide something to society. But in our case here in the West, we have a lot of immigration that's a net negative on society, and people will argue that, like your Alex Norastras and whatever. But I think at the end of the day, what it really does is, through our legal system, creates cultural clashes, right? Because you're going to see these groups of people pitted against each other, whether it's the native born or the immigration population, because the certain legal aspects that are provided to the immigrants or whatever, even the illegal immigrants, you know, we're taxed to provide for them in some capacity or another.
Yeah. Okay. Perfectly fine. So you're reading that. I'm just basically on this point, and I'm assuming, and he's saying it here. First of all, he says that he's misreading Mises, but then there's nothing in here where he says he misinterprets that, which would be the key kind of concept of your misunderstanding. Hoppe's saying we should restrict immigration, and he's claiming that Mises is saying the same thing. I don't think that's ever the case. He's just taking a different turn on it, which anyway, so let's keep going.
That says we can use this propertarian concept of the nation state to exclude undesired groups, exclude immigrants from crossing the borders. And it's a complete inversion of Mises's thought, and yet he's doing it under the mantle of saying, well, I'm the heir of Rothbard, who's the heir of Mises. So what I argue with Hoppe and my critiques of him is he's really importing two external traditions into Austrian economics and trying to pretend or claim that they are the roots of them where they're all along.
What are they?
So the first is his background and training. It's methodological. He is a Habermasian critical theorist. But instead of Habermas is on the left, he takes that and gives it a right-wing spin. He takes group identities and conflicts between groups as his methodological basis for understanding society.
And this is, again, Hayek, I think in the kind of revolution of science, talks a lot about methodological individualism.
Absolutely.
So that the individual is ultimately the proper unit of analysis in all kind of social and cultural.
This makes me think that, okay, there's an argument here, and oh my God, you're using it for something that I hadn't thought of or intended with this same argument. Doesn't mean that it's wrong to use it there, but how dare you use it in a different fashion than what the original thinker brought up for it, which seems disingenuous.
Yeah, I mean, it's totally disingenuous. I mean, obviously, he's Habermas, who he's talking about, and this is where Hoppe derived his argumentation ethics from, is because what was I forget the Habermas saying, but it's like, don't ask me about something on an empty when I'm starving or something like that. And basically, Hoppe took that and derived argumentation ethics from it, which, I mean, I have not heard a good sound criticism of argumentation ethics that actually has ever held any water to me. And I've been trying to go through and find some. There's quite a few people that argue against argumentation ethics, but to me, it's all just a performative contradiction, and that's what the whole thing is.
We'll get back here, but what in your mind is, and make this quick, but what school of thought do you use for the question of where do your rights come from?
I'm a natural rights. Like I would use argumentation ethics. Like
Do you think those two mix, argumentation ethics, mix with natural law, or is it just a kind of a non religious way to kind of put yourself into that mode, I guess, of thinking? I don't know. I'm still working my way through these, by the way. So
when I've listened to Kinsella talk about some of this stuff, he describes it as dualism, and which I tend to agree with. I mean, you don't have to have all or one, or all one or the other.
Okay, gotcha. Thomism is dope. Okay, Thomism is like as in tomfoolery. Okay, let's keep going here. Remember Dandy.
It's not argumentation ethics. Isn't bridging the is-ought gap. It's bridging the ought to another ought.
Okay,
and that's what people think. I think people get confused on that.
Gotcha.
Analysis.
Yeah.
But
Hoppe's taking the groups, and these are, they could be ethnicities, they can be nationalities, different groups of people. So it's the same thing you see coming from the collectivist left, only he takes it in a rightward direction to restrict immigration. And then the second external influence that he brings in, and you find this in his work, Democracy, the God That Failed, is his big treatise. It's actually some really ugly kind of racial eugenicist style thinkers, biological.
Is that true? And why do you enjoy that, Andy?
Well, I think you could determine like positive and negative eugenicist claims, right? Like to say if I'm a tall guy and I want to marry another tall woman so I can have a tall baby, no one is getting hurt in that. But if Hoppe is not claiming to say, oh, we should just throw deformed babies off a cliff or whatever. Like I've never read that in any of Hoppe's work.
Gotcha. Okay. David's clarifying it's pronounced Thomism, but it's a philosophy of St. Thomas Aquinas. He has natural rights there. Yes. Okay. So one of my favorite things I go back and listen to every once in a while is Andrew Napolitano, the judge, writes where our rights come from. He has a thing with Mises a few years ago, and it's great. He breaks it all down, and he does it. He works it through from Aquinas, Aristotle, Aquinas, and someone else, another A, and kind of takes it off into the reason. And you can argue these even as a religious person from a non-religious point of view. Spud said, gotta admit, eugenics holds a certain appeal nowadays. So look, if Hoppe wasn't, let's say he was Indian or white or Filipino, and he's like, I want to, and he was making some of these arguments, you probably wouldn't even care, because those ethnic groups, my son's dating a Filipino girl, and, I'm kind of surprised they're pretty traditional, that they're okay with that. And I'd be like, I get it. I'm not going to make a big deal that you might want your daughter to date a traditional Filipino short guy. I get it. My son's 6'2". It's just, it's sorry. But, whatever. I mean, that's kind of the way it is. So now, personally, I just hope he's with someone that makes sense to him. Okay. So let's keep going here.
Thinkers from the mid 20th century. So J. Philippe Rushton, who was this eugenics thinker, talked about like IQ.
Canadian academic.
Yeah. There's another passage he cites, Jean Raspail, The Camp of the Saints, which is this dystopian novel about hordes of immigrants from the developing world invading Europe. And he's importing this into his what's supposedly presented as an Austrian economics contribution. But there's a point in the book where he acknowledges that, yes, Mises was a liberal on immigration, but he says something to the effect of, well, this is an antiquated way of thinking that was suitable for the 19th century, but not for today. And then he goes on to cite like
I'm done with him, because he said he misstated Mises. He misunderstood. And then he says right there, oh, he admits he's going a different way. Then you don't make any sense. Okay, then that just go. Then you are Victor David Hansen, going off of your lane, and you're gonna discredit yourself, buddy. And it's disturbing.
He's being disingenuous there. If Hoppe is saying that, hey, we're going in a different direction, I'm taking this in a different direction than Mises, and you're saying that he is claiming simultaneously to be the heir of Mises, but misrepresenting Mises, and it's like you're not making any sense.
And look, we can all fall into some bias of I hate like a Michael Moore type, right? So if that's the case, then I'm going to listen to something. I'm going to take the worst possible interpretation and rip him apart like that. I get it. But as a scholar and someone that you think is going to be an analytical sharpshooter, you can't be doing those kind of little tweaks that you're trying to do there. So any last thoughts on him before we go to our next one?
I just think he's being disingenuous and misrepresenting Hoppe and Mises at the same time now. So, and he doesn't pass the fish check, and I will be ignoring him from now on.
Right, and no, look, that's a shirt I would have worn back in 2001, right after I got when I couldn't quite afford a nice golf shirt, and I had one of those. That's what I would have worn. Okay, Alex Jones was on with Steven Crowder. Did you watch the whole interview? Did you watch any of it, Andy?
No, I haven't.
Okay, then we'll just play some of these clips. This is one with Crowder's Twitter, and he said, this is why, what's his name? Alex Jones and I are no longer libertarians.
Dividing line between corporations, a free market, which I support. These are effectively thug arms of the government, and libertarianism cannot stand up in the face of that.
I 100% agree with you. In fact, I'm no longer even a little L libertarian. I'm anti-libertarian. 30 years ago, when I was first starting to get on air, 25 years ago, Republicans were pretty bad news, wanted to censor everybody, had a lot of problems.
Right.
The left hadn't turned into this pro-pedophile, Satan worship cancer it is completely yet.
You just hit the trifecta. Go on.
So I thought, well, libertarians want to leave people alone socially, but they want a smaller government. They must be good. But there was big think tanks and big money funding libertarians. So conservatives would always think of corporations as perfect and as government is bad, instead of it being a balance. And so now the globalists admit they were building governments basically run by corporations, or corporations so big they operate like governments, but way more efficient and way more authoritarian.
There's no.
Okay. Did you, what do you think of that? Let's just start there.
Well, the first thing Crowder said was free market. Wrong. And I could see, I don't want to defend them too much. I can understand their perspective given the Cato and Reason types who will throw bail to these mega corps. And, and I can understand even from their perspective, right? Like Walmart and Amazon provide us with cheap goods, and it's a net positive for society. And it raises people out of poverty. However, all of these corporations operate essentially as cartels with the government and other corporations. And I think they're looking at, if I was them, let me just try to put myself in Alex Jones' shoes. Those are big gorilla shoes to fill. But I mean, looking at it from his perspective, if you're someone who's not aware of like what the actual libertarian position is, if you think that the libertarian position is fiscally conservative and socially liberal, and you've never read Hoppe or any Hoppe or any of that or Rothbard, then maybe if that's like your understanding of libertarianism is the people who are saying that kind of shit of, protect our pot plants with full auto hormone guns or whatever, child hormone.
So we had talked about this before, and you were kind of defending them because you're a cuck. But my thing is, these are two not dumb guys, right? Now, I say Alex Jones is somewhat dumb, and I actually think I used to just dislike him a lot. And then when he kind of made his comeback with Malice and stuff, I thought he was more interesting and a little more as an entertainer. But when you see Malice talk to him and Tim Pool, and they're trying to like actually have a conversation back and forth with him, he gets so distracted. And I don't know what it is. DMT.
Yeah, he is a little wild all over the place. I mean, I like Alex Jones insofar as that, like, he's like a personality, and that's about it. You know what I mean? Like, I like that he's essentially like a wrestler. You know what I mean?
Yes. But I would also say, go ahead.
I mean, his attitudes and positions will shift with the wind. I think, to me, he can be a gateway drug for people in our camp. Alex Jones. I have more of a problem with Crowder in this clip. I see it as kind of like leading the witness. Like, oh, this is a free market. Like, no, it's not. And Alex Jones knows it's not. And to make him go along with it is just not.
What do you think is the most libertarian thought leader that they either one of them is aware of? Like, if you were like, okay, let's just take a list of and stuff. Who do you think they could both, and which one is more can name the most intellectual person? I think Crowder can probably name Milton Friedman. Okay. I'm going to say he's going to say that. As a matter of fact, later, by the way, I have Blaze subscription, so I was actually watching this, and Crowder actually says, well, he was at a dinner with right after the the Obama election, one of those, when there were 6 Reason writers there, and they said they voted for Obama, and he's like, and I'm like, okay, but you're Steven Crowder, you've got a wealth of abilities to tap into a bunch of different intellectuals and different people. You could probably even talk to Nick. Nick would probably be better than those 6 that voted for Obama too. I don't know. What do you think about Jones and Crowder being able to pick an intellectual in the Libertarian Party or Libertarian sphere?
I think Alex Jones would probably say someone different minute to minute. So, but Alex Jones has had Lou Rockwell on his show and people like that. So I don't understand necessarily where it's coming from. Maybe they've reverted back to like normie, just like conservative positions. I do think Alex knows a little bit more of what's going on in this realm than Crowder does. And I think, if Crowder is out eating with six people from the Reason camp, maybe that's why he's saying this dumb shit. But he's also like a GOP conservative who stands for nothing, so it doesn't really matter.
I mean, and it's interesting to see the reactions from this too. But I had been following and listening to Crowder. He got me into kind of this whole wave because I started listening to him. Then Dave Rubin was on, and then there would be kind of some libertarian people that kind of next, is just before.
They might both say They might both say Ayn Rand or something like that.
Right, and he used to say kind of libertarian, and I didn't find any of this libertarian stuff Rothbard until I found Dave, and then I'm like, oh, there was more than Cato and Reason, right? I mean, I was like oblivious to this. Or Glenn, he says, let's go here. Naturalist Capitalist. Reed says, Alex Jones hating libertarians is an endorsement. True. And yeah, I totally agree with that.
I wish they would be specific about which type of libertarians, because I know Alex Jones has to know that if he's had Lou Rockwell on his show, he knows that there's people that he would be in the same camp with that acknowledge this problem.
He was just with him on the race stuff, so that's where we go. But what's interesting is the people and that's kind of what Reed's saying here of like, oh, they're mocking it and they have reasons to do this, and then the whole Tho and Dave Smith. It's like, if you knew, by the way, Steven Crowder could say he's not here because of big business. Hey, it's a private business, bro, type of comment, but he's not going to because of Back to Blue, the war stance, so many more egregious things than he can cop to. This is why I'm not a libertarian. But the reason you're not is you can't say no to the wars. I can't quit you, Yemen, all these kind of things. And he's back in the blue all the time. So
he'll argue for the monopoly on violence. Until he's blue in the face. Right. When I called into InfoWars not that long ago, Alex Jones was doing a similar stance on the police, and he continued to, but I kind of moved him away from that after the Uvalde shooting, or tried to, at least in the conversation, that brief conversation I had with him, of why it would be better to have a private security force in public schools.
And you know what, that always gets me, because when you see him like with Malice on Tim Pool or something, he's saying one thing, and then Malice says things, and then he's like, oh yeah, that's, I get it, and he starts going down that route. So he might be a led guerrilla, if that's what the case is. Look, with this, my tweet and kind of pushback on them today was, and them, like they're reading my shit, was, okay, it's nice that you think that this has just suddenly happened, like, oh, it's a private company, bro, but if Rothbard has been out there for years, and he wrote a book called The Progressive Era, and that just outlines this from the late 1800s into the early parts of the 1900s, and John Odermatt kind of came back to me and said, yeah, things are worse now, and I don't know that they are. I mean, we've got to remember there was the Commerce Clause cases, all these a massive amounts of government overrun, the cartelization of everything. I don't know that there was the competition. It's bad now. Don't get me wrong. It's bad now. It's bad. But I don't know that. I don't know that it's worse.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that it's worse. I would say there's just more industry for them to cartelize. Like, this you could say it started in the progressive era, and that was a big part of it, and that's why I enjoy that book so much. But even proto-progressive era, Lincoln was doing this before then, where he was nationalizing industries or having businesses at the mercy of government and vice versa.
Yeah, let's get what Reed here said. By the way, Dave literally made him shit his pants the other night. So we have that. The Burt Reynolds of the Libertarian Party says Alex Jones is there to make you hate Iran, Sandy Hook victims, and the Illuminati instead of Saudi Arabia, the police, and AIPAC. He's there to throw off the scent and sensationalize the truth. You're not wrong on that. Wait, that's the one here specifically. Tyler's one of those cops who rides bicycle, horses, asshole. I ride the horse. You're right about that. Reed, I don't think that's wrong.
No, I would agree with that to an extent. I just don't think that, like, I don't understand like why attacking Alex Jones over this is like that big a deal. Like I don't really care personally.
Right.
Like to me, Crowder it would be the bigger play here because Crowder is like entrenched GOP hack, whereas Alex Jones will flip and flop, and you can get him to say, "Yeah, the police state is bad."
By the way, the most recent libertarian Steven Crowder had on his show that may make him, go away from libertarianism, Martha Bueno. He interviewed her just recently, and she did not convince him. Matter of fact, that could have been one of the... And by the way, that says a lot about her and a lot about him, that the one person he goes to is Martha Bueno to talk about her OnlyFans because she has tits and ass, and that's why that's why he brought you on. It has no other
Yeah, I
reason.
mean, if Martha Bueno is your standard of what a libertarian is, then yeah, I'd be an anti-libertarian too. So.
Yeah. It's ridiculous. So talk to us a little bit about the book. And I don't know, do you want me to play the clip? Because it's not a clip. It's like 8 minutes of Rothbard speaking, kind of talking about the origination of the progressive movement on the progressive era, and kind of but maybe you can give some people kind of an overview of the book, The Progressive Era. But before we do that, David Brady says I'm outed as gay. Reed says, no, Tyler, Dave didn't make me shit my pants. I could hold it in as well as Toad. Yeah, that's true. That's true. Toad saved the Libertarian Party, and we can talk about that. If you check back on my episode, my interview with Reed and Toad, we do go into great lengths about that. Okay, Andy, Progressive Era book. Have you read it or did you listen to it?
I've listened to it, and I've read it along, like while I was listening to it. I'll listen to it, I've listened to it a few times at work, and then sometimes when I get off work, I will listen to it while I have the PDF version pulled up on my computer so I can take screenshots of things that are interesting to me.
Damn. That's
so
by the way, I'll just say it's one of the first books because I was like, I'm going to go through this, and I wanted to start kind of back in the history. So one of the first Rothbard books I did do, and I listened to it when I was riding my bike, was The Progressive Era. And I was blown away by it. First of all, there was some great stuff in there. There was a lot of he goes through county by county elections at times, which gets really boring. But I thought it was very interesting, the conflict of the religious sects, the cartelization, and the railroads. But anyway, Andy, what's your take on it?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, if you are interested in liberty and you are concerned about what's happening in society, I mean, you can look no further than the COVID shit when you see the merger between big business and big government. To really get a firm foundation and grasp of what is going on in the ideology that drives us, you would need to read The Progressive Era. I think it's like one of the most important books you can read as a libertarian. I think what I'm most fascinated by, obviously, the early attempts of railroad monopolization are interesting, and you get into some economic theory there. But what interests me most about the book is how essentially progressivism became a religion. And a lot of these early progressives were pietist Yankee evangelicals who over time, well, let me back up. They're pietist Yankee.
And what now? The liturgical and pietist, or what's the difference there?
So liturgical would be someone from like at that time in the high church, or still today, but at that time, you would be a member of the high church. So that would be like Lutheran, Orthodox, Catholic, where the belief is that people are saved through the church, whereas pietists believe that people are saved as individuals. And the early progressive ideology, which still exists today, which I don't think enough people understand of how and why it's a religion. And this goes into the prohibition aspects of it.
Right. Yes. Very much. Sorry to get excited, but yes, that's something I gotta do now.
So what the idea is that you have to save man, the individual, every individual from themselves. And this is how we got prohibition, because the pietist Yankee and, evangelicals said, okay, well, drinking is bad. It's anti-Christian. So now we have to go out and by any and all means stop man from drinking. Even though, and even at that time, there was other pietist evangelicals that wrote these people off because, Christ turned water into wine, and drinking wine has been a Christian religious sacrament since it came into existence. And what they did,
wasn't it also some of the suffrage movement had something to do with this as well, with women, and then they didn't want their men being out just like, hey, why don't you home banging me instead of hanging out at the bars? And that was, we laugh, but that's literally part of the problem here is men not controlling their women.
Yeah. What essentially it did, they used this as a political tool as well, because the liturgical high church members tended to be ethnic minorities, which we wouldn't understand to be ethnic minorities at the time because all white people get lumped together. But these would be your German, Irish, and Italians who attended these liturgical church services. And after church, they would go to the pub and discuss what's going on in their communities. And that's where they would concentrate their political power. So with things like prohibition, it was stated clearly that they were doing this to atomize these communities of people and disrupt their political power. And same goes with, the whole reason the 19th Amendment was implemented was because the liturgicals and ethnic minorities, their wives were not political, as they should not be. What the Yankee evangelical pietists saw was that, okay, well, we can give women the right to vote, and that will double our voting power. And these women over here are still not going to vote because it's not part of their culture.
Yeah. Well done. By the way, I was just thinking back to Crowder. There was one of his guys on there. I'm trying to remember. It's the guy that fashions the wine. I don't know. I'm trying to remember his name. I used to watch the show all the time. He had a discussion a few months ago with one of their interns, and it was about war. And this intern, he's all pro-war because you've got to defend, and this intern destroyed him. It was fascinating to see. But anyway. So anything else about the progressive era and the reason for I'm talking about this? Look, it just came out. Facebook, Zuckerberg goes on Joe Rogan, and it's boring except for this one segment that says, the government basically made me. Well, they told me, not to put this out. This is misinformation about Hunter Biden's laptop, right? And you go and stupid Dan Berman, libertarian guy with the funky hat. He's like, oh, but it's terms of agreement, so it's still private business. And maybe this is what these two guys, these yahoos, Crowder and Jones, are complaining about. And first of all, I'm like, no, that is entanglement and state action. You think these businesses want to push back against this and have the government, they're knocking at their door? This is specific. These are First Amendment violations. So you have that. You then have Alex Berenson also saying where Twitter was getting contacted by the White House and, hey, why haven't you suspended this guy? Once again, that's the whole thing here. So those are things that both of these Crowder and what's his name? Alex Jones could easily reference and say the government is very much involved. They are, Section 230 be damned. This is not, a free platform anymore. This is not the free market. And we
yeah,
can go,
and
once again,
you can
go
look
back
at
to
their
the
employee
1830s.
list.
Yeah.
You can look at their employee list and see that there's a revolving door between big tech and big government. I think just
And
real
by the way,
quick
let me just
about the progressive era. I just want to say
say
what I found most fascinating.
I don't want
about
you to
it.
say it. I'm just kidding.
What I like about it is that you can understand how this has become a religion for so many people.
Yeah.
And I think if you understand that there is religious components to progressivism, even though they might not outright state it, and they may have become so quote unquote atheist over time, there is a major religious aspect to what they're doing. And I think another great book to go into on just the philosophical reasoning behind it would be A Conflict of Visions by Thomas Sowell, where you have the constrained vision and the unconstrained vision.
Yes. So what I was going to mention here is, I think, by the way, the overlap and the confusion of government, and you're like, oh, but they've always been involved. But then I think this is also a breakdown of the ability to defend monarchy in a sense, because I mean, like for me, I'm like, well, anarchy is the way, because you do remove the government at all. Then we'll talk about this. And people are like, well, that's not going to happen. I'm like, yeah, okay, I get it. So let's not even I'm not advocating for monarchy either. It's better than the others, but at some point you're still admitting the government is involved and they're going to be controlling either inevitably or not or whatever. But these two guys, and I say that in the nicest way possible, Crowder and Jones, I don't know why I keep forgetting who he is. They're saying we're not involved in this. So they want to be the hammer. And I know you've kind of not been interested in the Libertarian Party. So they want to be the hammer, I think, and pound their point of view into the left, which I get completely. But I think it also steps on religious and all the kinds of freedoms that they may still want. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I'd agree. And I think, and to your point about Dan Berman, these guys should be gatekept out of the movement when they say things like this and mocked and shamed and embarrassed, because essentially what they're doing is throwing bail to these monopolies that would not exist otherwise without government intervention. You can say it's a private company all day long, but the company wouldn't even exist without the rungs of the economic ladder being cut off on their way up.
I agree. So let's talk about one other thing. Why are we so heady on a Friday? Are you drinking anything good over there? I'm drinking.
No, I just have water.
Oh, well, this is called Always Hazy in Sacramento. It's a local beer, as you might imagine.
I suppose I could dip into my whiskey.
Oh, shit. Okay.
But I'd have to step away for a second.
Let's talk about the chat a little bit here. David Brady says, Rothbard is the intellectual I aspire to be. Well, I think you're Jewish, so you're on your way. Otherwise, I don't know how you get there. You do wear glasses, so that's solid. JC, he likes to say, oh my God, and then whoever he sees in the chat. What do you think about that, Andy?
I don't think about it.
There you go. Oh my God. Hi, Benzo. I love these fans, or people that are listening to. I've never seen Andy not drinking. He's lying. He did have a giant handle, Johnny Depp like of vodka. He says it's water, but I think it's a.
I might, if you don't mind, I'll step up and I'll pour myself a little glass of whiskey before you cue up this next clip.
Oh, you really want me to? Okay. Well, let me.
Well,
see if
I mean, I'd like to get into the Rothbard progressive era.
Yeah, I have time. My wife's out drinking, so people, hang on. Oh wait, keep going. JC is one of my favorite feds. Okay, JC is a Fed confirmed. Sounds good. What do you guys think about feds? Entire Power Hour, we were talking about names and slurs, and there's a few people out there that people think are feds. Are you in any group chats? Anybody out there where those people you might be concerned? I had one today. I'm not gonna say who it was, P-Nord, where messaging me, showing me that he's, I'm going to do a rant here real quick. Before we do this, and Andy's coming back, Ted Kaczynski. I know you guys love Ted, social industrialization and whatever the name of the book is. Ted Kaczynski, I'm going to do my Ted rant here, Andy. If you watch this, there's several, okay. Oh, good stuff. Watch any documentaries, may not see this on there, but Ted Kaczynski at one point tried to become a transvestite or transsexual. He wanted to do a transition. back in the day, so he had a lot of problems. Back in the day, he wanted to do this, but they said in order to do surgery, you're going to have to go to some sort of therapy. So the counselor, the therapist, interviews you and then refers you on to the surgeon. He couldn't get past that point because he was a little fucking nuts. And then he goes and bombs people and writes his manifesto. Now, we got that situated. I know Pete Quinones would send a trans guy to the wood chipper, but he elevates Ted Kaczynski. Do we have, is Ted Kaczynski's book really the trans story hour that we are not supposed to read? Andy, your thoughts?
I haven't read enough Ted Kaczynski to know. I think he probably makes some valid critiques, especially of the left. But is this a situation where you have to like separate the art from the artist or what?
Right.
The bomb from the bomb maker?
Right. By the way, he was a disturbing person. He did try to kill like near his property, this 13-year-old girl for no reason. He was just a creep. If he was my neighbor, you would want to put him down. I mean, that's just, there's no doubt about it. Do you know who Legal Man is? The Quash podcast, Legal Man. Mm-hmm. Have you heard of it? Okay. He's pretty good. He's from Texas, but he was doing a rant tweet once where he says, if you check out the trial, Ted Kaczynski was inappropriate. He should not. He was innocent. He's not the right person. He was railroaded. And then, so my question is, if that's not Ted Kaczynski, if Ted Kaczynski didn't do that, then whose manifesto is that? That's not the same guy you just put in prison. You want to say that Ted Kaczynski in prison, and I want to praise him for his book, but then he was railroaded and he actually didn't do all these bombings. We know the manifesto is connected to the bombing. So which is it?
Yeah, I like I said, I'm not as well versed on the Ted Kaczynski stuff. I think he's funny, like as a meme, and I think there is some criticism of technology and the way things have gone and industrialization. But I would look to Rothbard for that, not Ted Kaczynski. But that's just me personally.
Right. We could come up with someone else. Maybe who's your Luddite libertarian? Do we have any Luddite libertarians?
I would consider myself to be one.
Oh, okay. My son keeps trying to FaceTime me here, and I'm just going to tell him not now. Okay, let's
beat it, kid.
Busy. He's back at college, so he's a good kid.
No, what do you mean? Like, who would you describe as a Luddite libertarian?
I don't know.
Like an anarcho-primitivist? There's a couple of good ones. I forget the guy's
I don't know
name.
enough of these. Yeah.
There's an anarcho-primitivist that is actually really good at going against all the queer theory pedophiles shit. And he talks about how none of the queer theory people have ever denounced pedophilia ever at all. I listened to a couple of his lectures. He's pretty interesting. I wouldn't agree with him on primitivism. I'm not really like, if you want to live an agrarian lifestyle, by all means, go ahead. But I mean, I'm fine with technological development and advancement.
I had put out a tweet about I'm trying to find it here so I could get the exact comments that I did. It was about mean tweets, and I was basically saying, are you really, is mean tweets really going to push you away from the libertarian? Because people are, there's this mean tweet shit with Crenshaw, and then they're coming out and they're like, oh, this is why I'm not a member of the Libertarian Party. And I'm like, is that really why it is? Or do you just not really care about liberty? Because I'm sorry, a mean tweet from no offense, Reed, a small state affiliate is not going to keep me from something that I actually believe in. Like, I'm not necessarily a fan of that tweet. I don't really care either way, but it's not going to persuade me. Once again, it's Max Boot saying something on TV. It's not going to persuade me either way. So, I don't know what I had to do with that. I'm thinking a little bit today.
Mean tweets. I don't know. Like, I'm a working class fucking garbage man. I'm not offended by the graffiti on the worksite Porta-John, which I think most of these people would be. And that's like, to me, if it comes down to it, right? So if we keep progressing towards this dystopian nightmare that we're in now, and it gets worse, like, what's the end result? Like, are you going to be upset about mean tweets when people are starving in the streets? Like, who gives a shit at that point? Like, what is happening in reality is much worse than whatever is going to be said.
I remember now. So here it is. It's someone replied to me and said, let me just first go. And I said, is it the mean tweet that keeps you from being a libertarian, or that you really aren't that interested in liberty? And it's really interesting because there's two kind of options. And then people are talking about, I used little L, by the way, not big L. So they seem to misunderstand that too. I just thought this was a really odd take. He said, it's possible to be interested in liberty and not be a pedo.
I don't understand what he's trying. What that's supposed to mean.
I think he just burned the LP NH. I think that's what it was. So I don't know. Okay, let's show this. I think this is the one, by the way, and it's the only one I could really find with Rothbard. A short clip of him talking about, and I mean, this is who. It. Okay, well, this is who David Brady wants to be right here. He wants to. By the way, I love Rothbard. And love his books and his talks. He's a very interesting guy. He likes to drink his water and make his good little laughs. But here, let's talk about.
Shout out to Patrick Newman for completing his work in this area.
By the way, we're just cruising on people. And if you don't want to take off and not be part of this show for the rest of the day, that's perfectly fine. Andy and I are just chilling for the day, so we're just gonna keep on keeping on.
Don't run them off. Send super chats.
Yeah,
directly to my bank account.
You know, I don't have super chats. Give me some more followers, and we'll do that. And by the way, I'm not really here to make money, really. But if I have to, we would invest it into some sort of. We'd get Andy something. So if you guys want to send money at all, you don't have a way to do it. Andy, so why don't you talk? What did you say? I was going to have you describe something.
We need profit and loss.
No, it had to do with Murray Rothbard's thing, and I was going to have you describe
Patrick Newman.
Patrick Newman. Why don't you describe what Patrick Newman did, the great Patrick Newman, finishing the book?
So I don't know the entire story behind this, but I'll speak to what I do know is that Rothbard, from this video, you can tell is quite old. Rothbard has worked on this for a while, and he passed away, and Patrick Newman was able to, through his brilliance, decipher Rothbard's handwriting, which I've heard been described as illegible, and put together and complete the progressive era. So big shout out to Patrick Newman and his work. And if you get a chance to read Cronyism, do it. And then when you're done reading it, send me the book so I can have it. Because I haven't read it yet. I'd like to.
Spud asks, what's a Luddite? And Magoo says Luddite is someone who rejects technology. That's true. And then David Brady with the great one, real anarcho-primitists aren't on Twitter, which would make sense. So evidently Rothbard wrote like a doctor with a hand malfunction or something. No one could decipher his reading. Yet Newman was able to go in there, check out his notes, and actually made sense of it and finish the book off. So why don't we play a little bit of this clip here? The great...
about 1900. This only has 1,200 views, too. That makes me very disappointed. It should have 6 million at least.
Right. Off of Robert Wenzel's, I don't know.
Late 1890s, prices were generally falling. They were falling for good reason. Namely, the business was so competitive and the economy was so productive that the supply of goods and services was increasing at a rapid rate. In other words, that's when America industrialized. It was the biggest period of economic growth in the history of the world. And the standard of living went up, and productivity went up, and prices fell. This did not mean that businesses were suffering, because costs were also falling as the productivity increased and mass production increased. So in this situation, the many business groups who tended to be inefficient try to correct this price falling situation by organizing cartels. In other words, by organizing a cartel of each industry so that they could cut production and raise prices.
If you start talking about who these people are behind organizing the cartels, they'll call you anti-Semitic, so be careful.
Right, and by the way, it is interesting when he talks about the banks. It's the it's Chase, and who else? I'm trying to remember.
J.P. Morgan Chase, Rothschild, Rockefeller.
Yeah, because there's been a lot of changes, especially 2008 when the bank conglomeration.
Goldman Sachs,
right,
all those folks.
Right.
And this was tried in industry after industry, starting with the railroads, which were the first big business in the United States, first large-scale business, and continuing on through manufacturing by the late 1890s. Either trying cartels, formal cartels, or through mergers. And in the late 1890s, the theory was, we'll just merge into we'll have one big firm for the entire steel industry, the oil industry, et cetera, and then we'll be able to cut production and raise prices and raise profits at the same time. So they tried this systematically. This was the ideology, so to speak, among businessmen. That
cheers, Rothbard.
The way to benefit for all of us is to have quotas, either formal quotas as in cartels or in mergers where you just agree that you'll have certain shares of this corporation, and then we'll cut production, raise prices. That was the great goal. All of this was a total flopperoo, and case after case, literally hundreds of cases of this kind of merger or cartel, they all flopped. And they flopped for two basic reasons. One is that an economic theory can predict this, and this is confirmed time and time again. Two basic reasons. One is, well, the basic reason is that the industry is free. Government did not step in and force people to accept the cartel or accept the merger. So what happens is that when as soon as the cartel is formed.
What's that?
This is a really important point that he's about to make. And I don't think enough libertarians who tend to be, even in our camp, that tend to be a little bit more modal and not understand some of the economics behind this of why natural monopolies are so hard to create to begin with.
Yes. Okay.
Well, the merger is completed, and then they cut production, raise prices, and profits go up. Other businessmen come in and say, "Hey, this looks like a great industry here. The zinc industry, or the oil industry, or whatever, railroads. They're making a lot of profits. Let's nip in there and outcompete them because they're raising prices, and we're going to come in with a new firm, a new factory, a new railroad, and we'll bust them." And that's exactly what happens. You have new competition always coming in and outcompeting the older firms, and then the older firms are stuck with a new firm. Then you have a permanent competitor, which is a big pain in the neck because they come in with later equipment, with new factories and new equipment, the latest technology, etc. And now they have a permanent new competitor on their hands. So the whole thing became a big pain in the neck for them. And that's one reason. And then internally, what happened was that individual firms would start breaking the cartel. They say, look, we've raised, in other words, the cartel restricts production, raises prices are very high, and then the individual firm says, look, I'm not supposed to do this because I have a cartel agreement with the rest of my buddies in the industry, but here's what we're going to do. For you, my old pal and drinking buddy or whatever, my buyer, I will sell you the steel or the whatever, titanium, etc., for 20% off list, provided you don't tell anybody about it. Okay, so what you have is a secret price cutting, and then this firm gains profits, gains sales, and of course the secret leaks out pretty quickly after about 6 months or a year, and then the other firms get very mad about this, and they call it your rate buster, which is in business terms is equivalent to scab in union terms. Right. And the whole cartel falls apart with mutual recrimination and hatred in their back where they started, except now they've got more hatred than they had before. So in other words, this system didn't work. The cartel policy and the merger policy flopped. And at that point, some of each step of the way, some of the more far-sighted in the sense of realizing this was a flop among the business groups decided the only way to preserve a cartel or preserve a merger is to have the government enforce it. The turn of the political arm to create the cartel for you. And this was the origin of progressive regulation. The progressive system was not a group of far-sighted.
I thought I'd just chime in here before I forget about it. You might be too young, Andy, but there was a whole thing with Microsoft. They got sued early around before 2000, and they were never, because the whole idea at the time, at least Bill Gates thought, was we're not really going to get involved in government. So they wouldn't lobby or anything like that. Well, if you're not lobbying and your competitors are, at some point you're going to antitrust lawsuit against you, and it was horrible. So what does Microsoft do as a result? They dump a ton of money into lobbying, and hence you just don't have the problems that you did before. So exactly what he's talking about here, in a sense.
Yeah, and that lobbying has never stopped to this day, right. And this is what I think is so crucially important, is that once these industries or businesses are created, they understand that they can cut off the bottom rungs of the economic ladder behind them on the way up. And to the point of monopolies and natural monopolies, if you had a truly free market and a monopoly, one, it would be extremely hard to maintain, and two, it would be a good thing because you're getting the best good at the cheapest price.
Yeah. And they're always, look, and if I had this great ability in my job to where money just comes in because the government, it's like student loans type of thing, right? Where at college, that's really, in a sense, you're only getting loans from one spot due to Obamacare. So if I could say, no matter what, my clients are going to be able to pay, my rates are really going high. They're going really high.
It creates total market distortions everywhere and all the way up. From just imagine, Milton Friedman talking about the division of labor of what it takes to make a pencil, and there's market distortions all the way throughout all of that.
Right. Right. Okay, let's finish them off here.
Essentially, it was not a group of far-sighted intellectuals who sat around and said, we have to plan, we have to curb businessmen for the sake of the public interest. There's a groups of businessmen saying we have to impose cartels through the government, and thereby eliminating our competition, curbing the maverick firm which doesn't want to engage in a cartel, and gaining profits that way. So, for example, in railroad regulation, the first things they did after the railroad businesses put in the ICC, the Interstate Commerce Commission, the first thing the ICC did was to outlaw secret price cutting. Because secret price cutting is always a great instrument by which an individual firm can bust a cartel. And how you do it? You do it in the name of publicity. Or you say, well, it's a terrible thing to have a secret price cutting. All prices the books should be open. All firms should release publicity about their prices and costs, et cetera, so the public will know, the right to know, and all that jazz.
Propaganda.
What it really meant was we want to know what our competitors are charging. We do it by making the government make all of us release, open the books. So anyway, this is, and of course, you do this in the name of openness or democracy or whatever, in the name of the public interest, because America was born in an anti-monopoly ideology, a hatred of monopoly, meaning, by the way, monopoly meant for centuries, until modern economics came in and poisoned the well, so to speak. What monopoly meant was very simple. It meant a grant of special privilege on the part of the government to different businesses for exclusive production or sale of a product, period. It didn't mean a large firm. It didn't mean a differentiated product and all the rest of it. It meant very simply grant by the government of exclusive privilege. It's very much like during the discussion of Professor Peden before that when the church fathers attacked the rich, they didn't mean the rich, period. They meant tax collectors and so forth. It's a similar situation. A shift in the language. So how could they sell this to the American public? How could these business groups sell this, a compulsory cartel system, to the American public? They can't say we want compulsory cartels. So what they did was they created the ideology of the public interest. This is the public good. We have to curb evil business groups and sort of stuff. And the businessmen who took this position were then called enlightened by their allies, by the media, whatever, the media of that epoch. These are enlightened businessmen who rise above their own self-interest to look at the larger good. They have the far vision of like Diocletian. They want to curb their selfish profits for the good of the entire industry.
Yeah.
So if you've read the Progressive Era, even if you hadn't, I don't have the quote offhand, but the people who were pushing for cartels at the time, they even called the laissez-faire, the people who wanted laissez-faire capitalism, anarchists. And I know there's a lot of people who think that capitalists are not anarchists, and that precedent was set by communists and all that. But this goes back to the 1800s, and there is precedent for capitalists being called anarchists as early as the late 1800s. And even Johann Most, who was a anarcho-communist or more leftist anarchist type, advocated for the gold standard at this time. So that should tell you something.
What about Gold Star Family Standard?
The McCain standard.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry.
That's political capital for McCain.
Right. I did a tweet yesterday that I was like, oh, this shit's gonna blow up. I was like, you wanted gold, or you're supposed to invest in gold? I was like, McCain smelts gold star families or something like that. It didn't really go.
You were trying.
The idea, right, was right there. Right there. Okay.
There's probably some anti-Semitic joke to be made there too.
Oh, well, I did not go down that route. Some of the better tweets I've done are where I think of an idea and I'm like, hey, here it is. And then I just put it in my save in my draft box. And suddenly later it's like, I have an idea. I'm like, oh, that's how you make it right. And I couldn't stop. So I had to go. Let's keep it. Though Bishop talks like him, the syntax and kind of broken rhythm, like his brain 2 steps ahead of his mouth. Interesting. You're right. He does kind of have that. So if Though can speak through, well, Andy's got the same hair, but you guys need to shave your head or something. JC says, interesting how Rothbard's lecture to this day remains as relevant as ever. The woke liberal capitalism at WF, ESG. You're right. And you know what? I'm going back here and look, I was very influenced on my way through with the Ayn Rand, right? I read Atlas Shrugged multiple times. I mean, I've probably read it like 4 times, literally. And each time I skip over John Galt's speech because it's like 200 pages of pablum. But I find it to be a fascinating book. And you read it and you're like, this is written in the early 60s. And they're talking about, the way that they write bills and what they're created and these ridiculous people. And you're like, this just matches. My problem, though, goes back to the Alex Jones maybe and the Crowder thing, where you talk about, big business can't do wrong, back the blue type of thing.
It's a private company.
It's a private company. Yeah. And it's like, yeah. But Rothbard explains it so much better about the cartelization and the mixing in with the banks, and they want their little, hooks and everything. So, I hate Ayn Rand and objectivism. Okay. Thank you. I wish Rothbard was still around. Okay. That's gross because you're young. Oh, wait, what do you mean? Stakeholder capitalism. Okay, let's keep going.
I've never read Atlas Shrugged. I read The Fountainhead, and
I've not.
I like The Fountainhead. I think Howard Rourke's speech about secondhanders is one of the best literary fiction pieces I've ever written or ever read. Sorry.
What's interesting is I got to Ayn Rand's book. So I was real big, right-wing shit growing up. Michael Medved, I don't know if you ever heard of him, talk radio host. Okay, he's pretty good. He's super smart. Matter of fact, this guy was on like some quiz show when he was 16. He went through Harvard Law when he was 16. I mean, super Jew, smart. He was a classmate of Hillary Clinton, then comes out as a lefty and then comes out to right-wing. Point is, he was a talk radio. He had mentioned Ayn Rand, and so had oddly Rush Limbaugh. And then I was reading a lot of William F. Buckley Jr. And then I don't know if you've ever read Whittaker Chambers. Do you know anything about him?
I've heard the name, but I don't know anything.
Fascinating individual because he was a legit commie, and then he worked under I'm trying to remember the guy's name. A little drunk. But he worked under a guy in the State Department under FDR, actually at the time, and he was a legit commie, passing secrets, back and forth. And what happened is he ended up then becomes a right winger, hides these in a microfiche in a pumpkin in his farm, and then he contacts a senator who happened to be Richard Nixon. Nixon comes out, gets these, and it's the pumpkin papers and da-da-da-da. Anyway, exposes...
That's interesting. I didn't know anything about this.
So this guy, Whittaker Chambers, was a legit commie, weirdo, but very smart, okay? And he later becomes the editor of Time magazine. And he's a brilliant writer. He wrote a book called Witness, and he's a very good writer. He hated Ayn Rand. So I'm reading this book, and he starts talking about how he hates Ayn Rand. And I'm like, who? Oh, interesting. These other guys have talked about it, Ayn Rand. And so then I read Ayn Rand, and I'm like, I kind of like Ayn Rand. But he became very religious and, her opposition to that. So
I think there's things to like and hate about Ayn Rand. I'm not an objectivist, and I don't care for objectivism, but I think there is some value to her writing.
And by the way, this is what and just with Hoppe, right? Being able to say, I'm a derivative of Mises, and I don't have to take everything he says. I can work off of that. And Phill Magness is like, oh, well, then you're a heretic, I guess, which doesn't make sense. I can take Ayn Rand and I could say, I believe in God, and you dislike that part. I just, in a sense, I just kind of clip that out and enjoy the rest of it. I don't know.
You take what you can, like Ted Kaczynski.
You take the good, you take the bad, you take the rest, and there you have the facts of life. Okay.
And the good of a country. Now, how was this ideology pushed? The ideology was pushed very simply by intellectuals who are rising up. Throughout history, the statism has been imposed by two groups, an alliance of two groups: the state itself, the state apparatus, the king, the throne, and the opinion molding groups, the intellectuals, which in most cases in history have been the churches, the state church. And so this is known as the alliance of throne and altar. You have the church and the state. The function of the church was to tell the people to obey the state. The state is God in many cases. The king is God. The king is divinely sanctioned.
Yeah.
And in return for this, and the public believes them because they're the intellectual opinion molders.
Hoppe is actually really good on railing against the intellectual class.
And by the way, this is kind of talks about what you were describing with the progressive area of like religion, right? And then I've mentioned on some podcasts where you look back at, especially the progressive era, where almost 90%, I think, of the U.S. was religious of some sort. They believed in a God, and it's not that way anymore. And as you move away from that, we tend to still need that in our lives, and so religion, politics,
they
kind of just switch.
You keep certain religious aspects, and you can claim to be atheist all day long, militant atheist, but whether you want to acknowledge it or not, there is probably still some aspect of your life that is influenced by religion, whether you want to admit it or not.
Right. Or devoid of that. And you know, when I talked to Clint about Penn Jillette and then Shermer about with Dave Smith, it's kind of the same thing. These two are really, really anti-religious to the point where it's almost annoying. And I don't care if you're an atheist, but when they're that perspective, it tends to be a different, I don't know, a little different process. So
Reed and Ryan tend to be more of the militant atheist types.
Right, but I mean, I've had conversations with Reed, and Reed has an understanding, and I think, in a sense, a love of religious people, right, in his own life still, where instead of like, I hate you for what you've gone, and so I'm going to be a little more personal about it, and so he doesn't have a hatred. And by the way,
just to relate this to the Alex Jones, Steven Crowder thing, like I think
look at that tieback,
I think. In this same case, right, where you have Yankee evangelical pietists who are the figureheads of the progressive ideology, you have, you know, what people understand to be Christianity are those types because progressivism spread. And I think a lot of religious people, especially like Protestant types, don't understand that this progressive ideology is fairly new. It's not actually like what was considered to be Christian doctrine at the time, and a lot of people even then denounced it.
Right.
So if to say like if Cato is who you think is a libertarian or your Dan Berman types who are, it's a private company, bro, I can understand why someone would be anti Christian or militant atheist if their perspective is that, you know, these are the people that are who I think of when I think of Christianity.
Yeah, good point. Progressivism really is about 100 years old at this point. And, you know, perfected early on and then maybe discarded and then came back to it, obviously. So let's keep going on this.
Damn Yanks.
Sorry for that. The church gets part of the boodle. They get part of the state revenue in the form of tax subsidies and so forth. So this is a very cozy alliance until essentially Western Europe, until the age of Western Europe, and church and state were separated. And essentially, what in the progressive period in the early 20th century, you begin to reform the old alliance of intellectuals and government, big government intellectuals, who perform the function of court apologists for the new regime, and informing the public this is the public interest, the common good, the general welfare, and all the rest of it.
Okay, I don't know what that is. You know, he said there early on, maybe I missed it, I guess, but I remember hearing it earlier, which is there's two factions that really push this kind of thing, which are the states and intellectuals. And so what you said, Hoppe had some issues about intellectuals.
Well, no, Hoppe's really good about railing on the intellectual class. Like he sends that home in quite a few lectures.
What does he say specifically? Like tie them from their feet or their neck?
I couldn't quote him offhand. Thomas Sowell, Intellectuals in Society, is also another good read on how this intellectual class operates. And I haven't read it, but it's on my list of the managerial state. And I'm pretty sure that's along these lines. If you don't understand that there is a driving, motivating philosophy behind these people, it's not just policy. You have to understand why they're wanting to drive policy in a certain direction anyways. I think that is important.
Look, the intellectual thing is interesting because we do strive. Like, look, I'm talking to you. You know a lot about what you're talking about, but I don't know what your actual college degree or what you've done in there.
I'm a high school dropout.
Oh, right. So, and by the way, that thrills me for a few reasons, right? It tingles me to think that I may be able to pull one over on you. No. And I've said this about Dave Smith too, where he's super smart. I mean, you hear his breakdowns, and when I don't know if I've talked about breaking down videos, and I've listened to him, and in my mind, I'm like, oh, here's how I would do it. And then I hear how he does it, and I'm like, oh, that's actually the way to do it, right? And I don't think I'm a dummy. So my dad went, as an auto mechanic and one of the smartest guys I've known. So, your degree, which is so influenced on the left of like, what degree do you have? And this is how we're going to measure you. And it's so dumb.
Credentialism.
Yeah. Elitism, and it's the pushback against elitism. And I don't think it's not your love of Pol Pot where you say just because you have glasses and a degree, you're going to be killed. But, it's actually William F. Buckley, who is an intellectual in this. He used to say something about like, I'd rather be governed from the, first 300 in the New York phone book or Boston phone book than all the intellectuals at Harvard type of thing. So.
Yeah. And Malice is fairly good on this too, right? Like he talked when he had his conversation with Jordan Peterson, he said you would be the last one to face the wall or whatever.
Right.
Managerial revolution. That's what it is. Yeah, that's on my list.
Yes, I hate that. She hates whatever it is you said. She hates. Oh my God! Hi, Magoo. I have to meet JC someday because I don't know. He cracks me up, or she. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either. There is definitely something to the intellectual class, and this goes back to what I was just saying about, you have to understand the driving motivation behind them as far as what their philosophy is. And to me, if I was to put it in simple terms, right, I would say that why it is a religion is because the philosophy is that there is that man can be perfected.
Yeah.
Whereas my belief is that man is inherently flawed.
Right.
And if you believe that man can be perfected and that society can be perfected, because that would precede man being perfected, then you are going to enact policy that reflects that philosophy. However, what we see is with that religion of man can be perfected, that every policy that's enacted has reverse and unintended consequences. The welfare state has created more people on welfare. The warfare state has created more wars.
Look, when I met my wife, she had dabbled in religion like when she was really young, but it wasn't with her family. It was like neighbors, and then they ridiculed her, so she backed out. And then she meets me, and she's like, I don't want to be a part of this. But she came back to it. And part of the reason she did was I'm magnanimous, and that's the way I run my house. But the other part was I just talked to her about like, there's something important, I think, it matches what you said there about like having something above yourself, right? There's a higher power in a sense. You're not the be all end all. You can't solve these problems on your own. And I think this is the problem with communism in a sense, which is we're humans. Hey, there's climate change. We are going to not only, we can change the weather, we can fix the earth. And I'm like, you fucking can't do that. It's not going to happen. So there's a little bit of ability to kind of downgrade yourself and realize you're just a little peon here, right?
Yeah, the knowledge problem is bigger than even how Mises and other Austrians have explained it. There is an extent to the knowledge a human being can hold. You're not going to know everything at all times, always.
Right. Sure. I mean, I do, but for the most part, you don't.
There you go. I set you up perfect.
Yeah, I don't. I was an okay student, but that's what it is. So what do you got going on next, Andy?
Not shit. I get to see my daughter tomorrow, so I'm looking forward to that. I didn't get to see her last weekend because my apartment complex didn't have hot water because the boiler broke for the third time, and I was out without hot water for a week and a half.
Are you serious?
Yeah,
that's rough.
I mean, I live in the ghetto, bro. It's not everything I learn is because I want to, and I go out of my way to look shit up, and I'm interested in things. But like half the time I'm trying to fucking read or listen to something, I got fucking neighbors outside yelling or fighting or screaming. And if you're in a group chat with me, you've probably seen it at some point because I've taken some videos. But I'm not going to snitch on them. I don't call the cops.
No,
but,
you send it to
unless
us.
Unless it gets too far out of hand.
But. They vandalized my car or something like that. I think it was at one point. Look, I'm pulling for you, Andy. You're a good guy. You seem to get your
I'll figure it out one way or the other. I'll persevere.
I know you will. So we were out. I had a pipe break last year, and you go without water in your house for a week or so. It's brutal. I mean, luckily my in-laws live right behind our house. Around there, I could hit a golf ball to their house, and so we were able to go take showers. But it's gonna be rough. Yeah, losing water.
Yeah, I can do it myself because I'm a piece of shit, but I wouldn't subject my toddler daughter to it. So
yeah,
I've kind of just been chilling. I hadn't seen her since my birthday, and that's like really all I want is to just spend some time with my daughter.
So you do listen to Highway 20 Ride when you go to get it, right? You
I still haven't listened to it yet.
Oh, you motherfucker!
I need to. I got it on my playlist, so I'll get around to it.
It's Zach Brown band, by the way. I went and heard a concert in where the San Francisco Giants play, right? At their field, and it was supposed to be, it was the Eagles, but opening for them was Zach Brown, and opening for them, I'm trying to remember, it was like Doobie Brothers or something like that. I don't know, some other 70s band. It was good, and then Zach Brown killed it, and then Eagles were Eagles, but Zach Brown was actually better. And the song is basically every Friday he drives to pick up his kid, and he takes this 2-hour drive. Mom and I don't get along. That's what it is. So it's
yeah, someone must have given him a memo about my life or something.
Yeah, it could have been you right now. Okay. I mean, anything else? I mean, I'm just hanging out. I mean, we can keep going, or if there's a video you want to talk about, or a tweet that you especially really pushed out. You pushed out the libertarian stuff. Did we talk about that? Was that before or after the show?
Which libertarian stuff?
The Libertarian Party taking on the mantle of the father. Yeah, I think we talked about that at the beginning of the show, didn't we?
No, that was before the show.
Okay, well, why don't you talk about that? You just want the Libertarian Party to take a stance for men, fathers, or
not even. I mean, they could take a step towards fathers. To me, the family unit is more important. You don't have an economy if you're into Austrian economics and you're a libertarian. You do not have an economy without a family. I'm sorry. You can have a group of atomized individuals, but where do they come from? Where do they go?
What do you think? Have you heard of?
Let me complete my thought real quick.
No, I don't. Okay.
I just want the Libertarian Party. It's an easy win for them to take on. We want families to stay together. We observe and acknowledge and respect family values. I know a lot of the libertarians will say, well, what does that mean? Whatever. It doesn't necessarily have to be Ozzy and Harriet, but that would help. That would be a step forward. You could say, familiarism as far as like extended families, mom, dad, kids, but also grandparents and extended family. Everything they advocate for as far as ending the wars, ending the Fed. Why do you want this? Right? Like, because you want prosperity for people. And those people come from somewhere and that matters to them. And if they're not grounded in something, then they're not going to ever give a shit about what you want. And I think that, to me, is like a major factor. And if the LP can take a step into we will uphold family values and want to restore families. And if you take a look at the family crisis that's going on, we want to do something in the right direction.
Have you heard? Are you done? I don't want to interrupt.
Yeah.
Okay. Have you heard on that mode? Have you heard Thaddeus Russell talk about where he doesn't think the Christian value or the nuclear family is necessarily a positive thing? And I don't really understand what he means by that. But have you heard him talk about that?
Yeah, but also, I mean, Thaddeus Russell, isn't it? I like that. I have Thad's book. I've met him. He signed it. He told me I was his hero, actually.
Wow. But, did you have your daughter with you and you thought it was a girlfriend?
No, I didn't. I like that in some regards. I don't always agree with him. Just like I don't always agree with Ted Kaczynski. But
right.
No, I don't even like the term nuclear family because that makes it sound like this was like some turn of the century phenomena. Like families have existed since the dawn of time, and you can acknowledge that or not, but it doesn't change the truth of the reality. So like, you can be into all this fucking like cultural leftist, there is no family, the family doesn't matter. And I think probably where Thad comes at it from is because he's an anti-Puritan. Yeah. And I can understand that too, especially considering the progressive era, what the Puritans became and what they are now. But if you don't have a family, you don't have an economy, you don't have anything to really value, and you'll end up supporting anything. So,
and by the way, check out my interview with Thad. It hasn't blown up, partly because he didn't retweet it or promote it, but I actually thought it was really good. There's a lot of good stuff in there. And with that, I know I've heard him say, talks about the nuclear family, but he doesn't necessarily say that the extended family is a bad thing. Grandparents in some of these societies that have, Italy as an example, where you're fucking 30-year-old married with kids and you can't get your mom out of the house because you live with her. I mean, we mock that here, but over there, that's a traditional thing, and it's not necessarily
it's a cultural custom.
Yeah. Now look, my kids I'm close with my two sisters, and they have a bunch of kids, and my kids don't do certain things due to peer pressure for how their cousins will berate them. And I think that's a beautiful thing. It keeps you in line, and that's important. So
different cultures have different values, right? Like, so India will arrange marriages. Not everybody in India is getting arranged marriages, but that might work for some people over there. Right. And who am I to say, okay, don't do this because of X, Y, and Z? Like, but y'all are over there to do your thing.
It's okay for you to say that, but if you were to talk about white culture, now you're just Hoppe.
Yeah, I'm not allowed to embrace any white cultural values, and that's to say white. I mean anything off the continent of Europe that translated to the U.S. Right? Because I mean there was a transformation, right? You don't have, like, the Irish people or the Appalachian people are distinctly like Irish and German settlers, but they're not distinctly Irish or distinctly German in terms of what we would think of Irish people today or German people today. But these are like geography and culture and time and place creates these people.
Okay, that's pretty funny, Jesse. Well done.
Yeah.
My wife watches this show. It's about arranged marriages. Indian. They come over to the U.S. and somehow there's these Indian counselors or whatever, and they match them up. And she's fascinated with all kinds of stuff.
My point with that was like, it's okay,
motherfucker.
It's okay to have a culture, right? Like, I think this is where Magness loses what Hoppe is trying to say, is that it's okay to have a culture and want to preserve it. And I'm using preserve, not conserve, because we know what happens to conservatives.
Right. Yeah. So I will have to check out Hoppe. Now, I've never thought of him, and it's so easy to just jump on, and I know Phill does that and saying he's just a race. Now, his stuff that he was posting on Twitter was different than his interview here. He was outright saying he was, he being Hoppe, was almost citing or lamenting the downfall of the Third Reich. I mean, that's literally what he was. I don't know if you saw those tweets and outlines.
I saw.
Tho and Dave were both ripping on him, as Tom Woods was, and I think Bob Murphy.
Yeah, I saw those tweets. I'm not as knowledgeable about some of that stuff.
I know either.
I listen to some people that are smarter than me on that stuff. I think just his critique of Hoppe, as far as like, oh, you want a white separatist community, misses the point that Hoppe is making. If you look at Hoppe's work, and I think ultimately Magness ends up arguing against first principles as far as a libertarian. Like, you self-ownership and private property. you have the right to discriminate against anybody for any reason whatsoever. Whether, like I said earlier, whether it's because their hair is too long or because the color of their skin. I don't have to agree with it, but you have that right to discriminate against anybody if it's on your private property.
So if you read Rothbard and you read Block as an example, and you're talking about exactly what you're describing there, and they form this world without Civil Rights Act as an example. Well, what do you do? How do you get the community and people? You shame them. So now you end up going towards
social pressure.
Right, social pressure, which is what the McCain tweets were kind of all about, right? Well, then, you know what? We're going to shame them. We're not going to write laws or whatever. Now that people have problems with that. So if you want to, the purely libertarian thing is, I think, you follow down, it's very logical. Oh, by the way, that kind of reminds me of a sidestep. I got blocked by Hannah Cox. Is that her name? Based politician or based politics?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. I got blocked by her, which pisses me off only for one reason, which is I had blocked her and Brad a month or so ago, and you motherfuckers in the group chat kept diddling with them. And I'm like, I can't see the tweets if I'm blocking them. So I unblocked him, and then she blocked me. And now I can't block her because she blocked me.
Wait, you said you had her blocked and now you can't block her?
Right. If you go to block her, it says you can't block it. That's literally what it said.
So you unblocked her to make a tweet to her.
I unblocked
Is that what
her.
happened?
I unblocked her to look at all of you guys tweeting at her and Brad and everybody else. I'm like,
no, I've had them blocked for a while.
Okay,
So
well, it wasn't.
Don't let me in.
Maybe it wasn't you, but I was like on the. Let's block them, and then
I tweeted them from behind the block.
Okay, well, I think that's a little cheesy, so I wanted to make sure they really read what my biting
They
comments
can
were.
read my shit all day long. They're not going to change their fucking mind. Hannah Cox is a DC think tanker, which is exactly who Jones was talking about. And
right.
And
Brad
Colombo is a deeply homosexual man who thinks that homosexuality should not be stigmatized.
Right. And that monkeypox is just something that happens on your holiday. So
exactly.
She had a new profile picture, which was so staged. I'm like, I just can't do that. So she has this profile picture, and then Brad underneath it, as a homosexual, says, "Oh my God, that's so hot." So I just said under him, I'm like, it seems rude to call her manly. I mean, this is a gay guy calling a woman. I've never called a man hot. And so obviously he just thinks she looks like a dude. She blocked me, and that was a rip on him more than it was her. And he didn't block me because I think he thinks he has a chance.
Have you ever heard the term fag hag?
No, I don't. But yes, just now. What?
He's the gay man that she can pull out of her pocket. A lot of straight women nowadays love to have a gay male friend that affirms them.
Is that like me saying I have a black friend?
Yeah, it's a lot like that, actually.
Okay. Well, I do. Well, technically, he's from Ethiopia, so I don't know if that really even counts.
I used to have some black friends. Now since I moved away from Tennessee, all my friends are Mexican. So
it's good to hear you have friends, Andy. I've been worried. Okay, I think we're at almost 2 hours. Solid work. I appreciate you joining me on a Friday. This has been good. Yeah. So we'll do another Kill podcast. I don't know what the deal is. People just aren't signing up for this thing. I mean, Dave said it's a good idea. You know what it is? You and I need to just reach out, find our one guest that's going to be there with us the whole time, and then announce it, and then say, you want to come on, and then those people will maybe want to. But we're going to have to do it like Jose did.
I passed this on to you with Weirdy Lockdown Clint.
What about it? You want him and Ashton?
No, don't put me in the middle of them two. I don't know what goes on there, but I was saying we should have, there is a special guest host, right? Like there's a special guest.
Kill Tony. We got to do that. So you're saying get Liberty Lockdown Clint?
I think he would be open to it. I mean, he does the Tower Gang podcast. I don't know his. I like Clint, even though I don't know how he feels about me now. I did kind of go against him on his neocon pedophile equivalence.
Did he block you?
No, he hasn't blocked me.
Then you're probably just fine. He's a block heavy person, so you're good. Look, I think
I met him in person with my daughter, and we had a good hangout. So
there you go.
I made him eat fried green tomatoes. and he's never had those before as a Californian.
Let's take. I've had those. Back when this Bananarama, is that a Psych reference? The TV show. Back when I thought I was a Republican working in a gun store, I drew the ire of my coworkers by apparently preaching Hoppe and stuff. I've always been an anarchist, Austrian economist believer. Comma. I just didn't know it. Okay. JC says the episode with B. Muchus was hilarious. Yes, it was. I'll kick y'all with the next episode. Okay. Yeah. Magoo, come on. Okay, cool. So we'll do that.
I'll be satisfied when we have more guests than we know what to do with.
Right. Well, one of those early ones we did, and anyway, we'll get this shit together. It'll happen. It's gonna happen. Right.
We'll keep doing it one way or the other until it happens. Like
personally, Andy, you're my favorite person to come on. I don't think of you as a guest. You're a co-host in a sense. Clint might be my number one repeat guest. I think I've had him 3 times. So just think of that.
Maybe Josh Smith would be interesting to have.
I've been wanting to have Josh on, so maybe I'll reach out to him and let's do that, and then he can say sure and maybe invite some of his people on. So Andy, before we go, what's the podcast you listened to this weekend on your drive?
This weekend on my drive, I'm not going to listen to a podcast, but there's a Mises Media lecture that I have fallen asleep to the past couple nights in the first 15 minutes. Let me look it up real quick.
Is that the one you sent in the group chat today or yesterday?
Yes. Prospects for Harmony Among Libertarians and Conservatives Today by Daniel McCarthy. So that is what I'll be listening to.
Okay. I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm going to listen to it, probably finish off. I'm going to have Nick Gillespie, everybody. Wait, here, Anna Bananarama says, I hate blocking people. I've only blocked one who is confirmed creep. Look, here's the reason for, I'm the same way.
I'm very liberal with the block button. Yes, I block a lot of people because I've been banned several times.
That's the reason why. Once you start getting your account higher, you realize, and you start seeing your friends just getting shelled out of here, you realize that the block is a defensive move to keep you on the platform. I'm almost at 1,700, by the way. People, get me up there. I'm 7 short, 1,693.
I passed 1,488 today, and I didn't get to do a screenshot of my 1,488th follower, and I didn't get to congratulate them for it. So.
When I had 1666, I said it was saved by the 1, and the 1 was a capital O. It was a God joke. I don't know if you can get that, but anyway.
No,
okay.
I do.
Okay. Okay.
There's a lot of biblical scholars who say 666 is actually 616.
Oh, why is that?
Down that rebel.
No, I don't really care to. I like the 666. It's much more.
I like cliches, so whatever. Doesn't matter. Iron Maiden.
Oh, okay.
Number of the Beast.
I'm not a big Iron Maiden fan. Okay, I think we're done. Andy, any last words?
Go fuck yourself.
All right, there you go, everybody. You can find Andy at Garbage Main on the Twitter. He's got an Odysee channel as well. Once again, check out our shows. I'm having Nick Gillespie on. He promised me we got it set. We're gonna get this thing going. I'm going to talk to him about some odd stuff, but I can't help but do what I did with Dave, which is up front. I've got to ask him a few questions. So if anybody's interested in maybe throwing some things at me, I've already got some in the works. So it should be a fantastic night. Good night, y'all. Have a good weekend. And other than that, I don't know. I have a really good thing to say.
Don't ever plug my shit again.
Go unsubscribe from Andy. Bye, everybody.
Things are going to start happening to me now.
You've done all the reading. You're a scholar. You're a professor. You've done all the reading. You've done the intellectual heavy lifting.
More or less, eat shit and die.
You wouldn't know a fact if it begged you all night long.
Want to give the wrong impression because I am very high.
Ran up behind him with a hatchet. Smash, smash, smash.
Yeah, care. I'm a libertarian. What I'm getting is,
did you vote for Joe Jorgensen or Trump?
Who?
Joe Jorgensen. That was the perfect answer. Thank you.